The scripture lesson this morning is from Matthew 28, verses 1 through 10. After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and going to the tomb, rolled back the door and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the woman, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell the disciples, he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." There was Christian missionaries serving on a remote island. They had been there quite some time, sharing with their love of Christ with the natives. And when they were about ready to leave, one of the natives looked at them and asked a question. "Can this new religion tell us anything of what happens after death?" Do you hear that? Can this new religion tell us anything of what happens after death? And the answer is a resounding yes, it can. You see, the first Easter morning is God's answer to all of our questions, to all of our fears, to all of our struggles, all of our doubts. That Easter morning dispelled all of that. It is the assurance of all of our hopes, all of our dreams, all of our desires. That first Easter morning made all things new. It made all things new. You ever think about that? I remember when I was growing up, if we were going to go to Easter services on Sunday, which didn't happen very often in my family, but if we did, we had a new shirt or a new pair of pants or something new that we wore. And that's kind of where that comes from, because Christ makes all things new. You see, the resurrection of Jesus is the greatest watershed event of all time. The greatest event. Greater than the parting of the Red Sea. Greater than the dividing of the Jordan. It's even greater than a ball game. And some of you are probably saying, it can't be any greater than Kentucky getting beat. But it is greater than that. You see, it's the most important event of all time. And now, some people would argue that Christmas is the greatest event. Well, when you look at how much money is spent on Christmas, we might say that. But it's not. Because without the resurrection, the birth of Jesus would have been just another man. But the resurrection sets it apart. And so it's the greatest event. It's where our sorrows and where our heartaches find relief and find joy. You see, Easter is the day that God defeated sin. He defeated death. It's the day that God stood up to the bully on the playground, namely Satan, and said, "You can't have your way anymore." He stood up to him and he said, "That is enough. That is enough. Cease." Jesus had to be sentenced to death. He had to be whipped. He had to be paraded through the streets. He had to be mocked like a criminal. Nailed to a cross and left for dead. And God said, "That is enough." But then there was silence. there was silence. All day, Saturday, on their Sabbath, there was silence. And silence can be deafening. You ever thought about that? We don't like silence. If it's silent, we turn on a TV or we turn on a radio. We want to hear some noise. I know that on Sunday morning when we have silent prayer time, there is people out there going, is it over yet? Because we don't like silence. You see, silence causes us to think about some of the worst times and some of the worst things. And that's what those disciples and all of those people were on Saturday. They were thinking about what happened on Friday. And it was the end. It was over. But then a new day broke forth. And God was ready to stand up against the bully. And the women went to the tomb and the stone was gone. It was not there. And it was a discovery that changed all the world because Christ the Lord had risen. He was alive. He was not in that tomb. Did you notice that when you came in this morning? Nothing in the tomb. He is alive. He is risen. So let's think about some of the things on that day. Jesus overcame the power of death that day. Death had no power over Jesus Christ. God was greater than a tomb. He was greater than the tomb that held Jesus. God's love is stronger than the bonds of a tomb. God's love is so great that He was willing to go to the cross for you and me. There was a young boy who went to camp for the first time. And he was there at camp and he was getting ready to go swimming, but they had to listen to the counselor tell about all of the safety rules of swimming, and the counselor said, do not swim without a swimming buddy. Always have a buddy when you go swimming. And then he asked the question, what does it mean to have a swimming buddy? And this boy looked up and he held his hand. The counselor said, what does it mean to have a swimming buddy? And he said, a buddy is someone with you. Jesus was willing to drown with us. For us. He was willing to go. But then He returns to share His resurrection power with all who believe. He was willing to walk on the earth after He rose. And then when He died, all who loved Him mourned. But when the women went to prepare His body for burial, Jesus meets them and says, do not be afraid. You hear that? Do not be afraid. Life can be tough. You look at the newspapers and watch the news and we have reason to be scared. We look at what's going on in our own lives personally and the struggles that we might be going through. We lose loved ones and we mourn with broken hearts like life is over. But Jesus has the last word. Do not be afraid. Isaiah 41:10 says, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you with my righteous right hand. And Philippians 4:4 says, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. As Christians, we're to rejoice in our struggles. Rejoice in our struggles. Oh, that's hard to do. Because all we want to do is whine. But Jesus says, rejoice. And then those who convicted Jesus, those who crucified him, those that were a part of nailing him to the cross, thought that it really was an end. They thought it was the end. But it was really just the beginning of new things. See, he told the women to go tell his brothers, and go to Galilee and they will see. Go to Galilee and they will see. You see, Jesus had lit a fire in the disciples that could not be put out. It was burning within them. It was alive. It was an active fire burning within them, that their desire to go out. He told them in Matthew 5, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden." And the light Jesus had speaking of was the resurrection light that dispelled the darkness. He was alive. A light no darkness could ever put out. You see, the message of Easter is still the same. As it was more than 2,000 years ago, then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." Some translations say, "I will meet them." You see, He will meet us in our situation in life. He will meet us in our challenges in life. He will meet us in our sorrows, in our relationships. In every act of mercy and kindness that we extend, He will meet us. He will be there. In everything that we do, Jesus is there. But we say, "I can do it myself." We have that 2-year-old mentality that we can do it all by ourselves, and we cannot do it by ourselves. Our relationship with God, our vertical relationship, has to be good with God before we can have a horizontal relationship with anybody else. And if we do not have that relationship with God, we're going to struggle with this relationship with other people. It happens over and over and over again. We have to have that relationship with God. Many of you might remember the picture that's coming up on the screen. Anybody remember that? In the midst of tragedy, a cross still reigned, stood there. He meets us at our lowest points. And He meets us at our highest points. Confirmands, if you want to go get prepared. You see, the love of God cannot be destroyed. His salvation and His love will not collapse like a brick and mortar building. It will not. It will not. It will remain forever through thick and thin. It will remain. I want you today to remember that He lives. And He will live eternally in us forever. His love never ends. It never ends. It only gets stronger. He's committed to us and for us. Today we have 5 young people. They've chosen to allow Christ into their life. They were once baptized. Their parents had made that decision. But now they have made the decision to be confirmed and be a part of the church. I would like for you to turn in your hymnals to number 33 and follow along with me. This will not be on the screen.